guess so. Yep. Dave was with me, so he's on the way over as well. So everybody ready? Just gonna go time. 3:05. The work session of the Annapolis City Council on Thursday, September 16th will be called to order at 3:05. This time, will everyone willing and able please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. City Attorney, please present the first item on the agenda.
The first, can you hear me? This microphone is non-existent. The first item on the agenda is ID 19821, the state police reform legislation.
Thank you, Rhonda.
You have a mic? Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me now? Wonderful. We wanted to take this time to talk about the state legislation and some of the massive changes that are going to be coming to not only the Annapolis Police Department, but to the city as a whole because of some of the provisions within the state legislation. I want to start this out by saying the state legislation did not include any funding. Did not include any funding for some of the provisions. While we hope that when they reconvene session, that they may consider some funding aspects, we can't take the position that we're not going to go ahead and work towards implementation and provide for the necessary funding or requirements that we need. So the Maryland State Legislature passed House and Senate bills aimed at police reforms during the last legislative session. They are House Bill 670, House Bill 193, House Bill 1248, Senate Bill 178, Senate Bill 600, and Senate Bill 71. And you are reminding me, ma'am, to make sure that my device is off. Which one is not? Making sure we are all on mute. The mandates within the House and Senate bills have implication for fiscal impacts and will require enormous police department policy and procedure changes. This presentation will specifically address impacts to the city and the department and that help us comply with the mandates as well as the timeliness for the compliance for those mandates. And so these are the effective dates. Effective dates for House Bill 670, which is the largest piece of the legislation, is July 1, 2022. House Bill 193, July 1, 2022. House Bill 1248, October 1st, 2001. Senate Bill 178, October 1st, 2021. Senate Bill 600, October 1st, 2021, and Senate Bill 71 is July 1st, 2022. in order to implement these massive changes, policy rewrites, because they stretch through various agencies, we formed a task force. And so we meet every Wednesday and discuss moving forward, assign tasks, and talk about our general cooperation with one another. I am the project manager. Lieutenant Della of APD is the assistant project manager. The team consists of Carrie Berger from legal, Lynn Farrell from the city manager's office, Tricia Hopkins from HR, Tyra Kimbo from HR, Brian Paquin from IT, Corey Bradley from risk management, and Katie Connolly, of course, from fiscal. We'll begin with the largest of the bills, which is House Bill 670. So the first with the fiscal impact is House Bill 670. It requires officer identification during stops. This is some of the language from the bill, that they will have proper ID. We have been conferring with some of the members of the Training Commission and the Maryland Chiefs, and the word display comes to mind. And there is some discussion on whether or not there should be a picture ID or whether or not we should just have name tags with an officer's departmental identification on that name tag. Again, we discussed earlier what the departmental identification means. The officer has two numbers specific to them. One is the badge number. The badge number, of course, is the number for the badge, and when they get promoted, they get a new badge number, each promotion that they take. The ID number, and the employee ID number, is the only number that is consistent with the officer. You get an ID number when you come on, and you have that same ID number if you retire or you leave the department. That is the number that the state is requiring that the citizens see. And so we have discussed, various ways to do this within the implementation group, whether that would be Velcro, name tags, or the shirts affixed, which they do now standardly with their name and their ID number on it. But if we purchase the ID cards, purchase the shirts, if we got 5 shirts for at $60, and for 107 officers, it would be $32,000 to purchase that. We could go another route, but again, the officers from day to day, they have various uniforms. And some of the summer uniforms with the shirts, they already have the name sewn into the shirt. So we would kind of want to be consistent, with that. So now we have to add that number to it. And again, that cost would be kind of a one-time cost to the city, because of course, the officers have written into their contract a set amount of money that we budget for, that they can use for uniforms. But because this legislation came up and they didn't have anything to do with it, we would incur the one-time cost to get them the shirts, and then thereafter they would incur the cost if they needed a new shirt.
Is it asking for the identification to be attached to the uniform, or are they able to do maybe like we do, these little ones? Or does it have to be on the body?
It doesn't say that it has to be attached. It says that they have to display it. And so we talked about, what that looks like. We talked about, they do have a name tag, and that we would get them 2 name tags or, 2 identification cards. But the problem with that is that You know, if the little tags, we looked at that, and we looked at the risk of that thing breaking and them losing the ID card, or if they're involved in a tussle and, you know, that card gets ripped, what is the probability that someone would try to take that card and impersonate an officer, which would place the city at liability. So we went away from that. Yes, this is long, so. Okay, 670, Chapter 59, adds language to the Maryland Public Safety Article 3-102, 3207G to require police officer accountability boards. Each county shall have a police accountability board to hold quarterly meetings with the heads of law enforcement agencies and otherwise work with the law enforcement agencies and the county government. And I highlighted that in red to say county government to improve matters on policing. And so within the implementation group, what's going to happen right now is that as far as discipline is concerned, the county will establish an accountability board. They will choose the members of that accountability board. They, as you can see, will appoint civilian members for charging committees. So there'll be 3 separate entities. There'll be an accountability board, there will be a charging committee appointed by the accountability board, and then there'll be a trial board appointed also by the accountability board, all of which will be appointed by the county government. And so within our implementation group, we know that the citizens of Annapolis want to have a say in, you know, what that accountability board looks like. And the state, in the state law, created the accountability board but remained silent on any rules around the accountability board and how they would be formed. And so we interpret that to mean that the county government is the entity that will form the rules governing the accountability board. And because we sit in the county, we believe that Annapolis should be or should have some say in some of the rules that we would be governed under from the accountability board. One of the provisions within this, the law says that the county has to create a budget for the accountability board. We know that they could possibly come back and ask us for funding to run their accountability board. With all the provisions that are in the law and what they would have to do, because they have to coordinate discipline through 5 agencies. That would be the Annapolis Police Department, AA County Police Department, Crofton Police Department. It would be the sheriffs, the AA County sheriffs, and it would be the college police department. They have to coordinate discipline around all 5 of those agencies. They could come and ask us for funding because I interpret this to mean, because this is one of the few items, and I think the only item in that says that they had to create a budget, requesting that the county create a budget, that means that these are going to be permanent positions. And quite frankly, with what they have to do, I don't see them being anything other than a permanent position. It's just what that's going to look like. How many members are they going to have? What are going to be the rules? How are we going to, what is going to be the process for our discipline to come to the county, get back down to us, because this board is also going to have the ability to receive complaints from within the county and then disperse them out to the responsible agency. Now, one thing that it allows the local government to do is establish a trial board. But if you go and read into the legislation, and I encourage everyone to please, Carrie Berger sent out a synopsis of the legislation maybe a couple of months ago to all the city council members, that if you all could please read that synopsis, and you will see some, pretty, kind of things that are in conflict. It says that the county is supposed to pick the trial boards, but, and it kind of says that local government can establish their own trial boards. So we kind of need to clarify that with the county. And so what is happening right now in our implementation group is Lynn Farrell has reached out to the county. We are beginning meetings with them to see what this looks like. This provision here is due July 1st, 2022. And I am extremely nervous that if we don't start working with them as soon as possible, that we may or may not meet that date. And so it's critical. We have began our work in implementing the state provisions, but we still need to talk to the county about theirs and see, how they want to handle it. This provision of the law also states that seated on a trial board, that it has to be a judge, whether a sitting judge or a retired judge, a member of the community, and a selectee from the accountability board. Again, I would believe that the city council would want a say into, who those people are. And especially, if it's going to be a trial board centered around the Annapolis Police Department. Again, we can't know what the exact cost this is going to be until we actually meet and talk with the county. I can't imagine that any judge, right now in the trial board process, there are 3 members to the trial board.
Can we let her finish her presentation and then save questions till the end? Because we can hear you. Yeah. Thank you.
So right now, there are 3 members to the trial board. One is a command member, one is a peer officer, and one is a civilian. Thank you. And the command member is the individual responsible for recording all the records, notes, and the adjudication for the trial board. Right now, the county says that there can only be 1 member from our department, which is a peer officer, seated on the trial board. The other member would be a civilian member from the community, and the other member would be a judge. What they did not say is how or who is going to write up who is going to write the trial board proceedings up, because right now, the commander is responsible for that. So these are things that we need to build in. These are gaps within that legislation that I had hoped that city legislation would address. But these are some of the things that we need to think about.
One thing real quick.
You ourselves.
A little easier. How many slides are there?
22.
Okay, so
And so I'm moving through them. I'm going to just give a brief overview, and then I know that you all have a lot of questions to ask. House Bill?
write down slide number, and then we can go back to the slides as we get to it. We used to have it.
House Bill 670, Chapter 59 adds language to Maryland Public Safety Article 3-106 to change the trial board proceedings, which I just talked to you all about. Again, we think there will be a fiscal impact to Annapolis. We think that there's no way that a judge is going to sit on a trial board for 2 or 3 days and then write it all up and not be paid. And he or she would probably be the only member qualified there to be able to write those proceedings up and write an opinion. The general consensus from the Training Commission and from the Maryland Chiefs is the rate for a judge will be about $300 to $400 per hour, and that would include, again, writing the trial board proceedings. House Bill 670, Chapter 59 adds language to the Maryland Public Article 3-106B to require all law enforcement agencies to establish a database for complaints and appoint a victim rights advocate. And so this database has to be front-facing. The law is very clear that the citizens have to be able to go in, put a complaint number in, bring a case up for complaint that they made, bring that case up and be able to look and see what the status of the case is. So in the implementation group, we have been working. We have good news that the current system that we use for discipline, IA Pro, created this system for the state of Georgia, and that they will be introducing their product at around the first of the year. What we don't know is how much this is going to cost, but it is front-facing. When we talked, it appears to comport with what the state wants in that front-facing system, and we could add other features if the council or others. These are the gaps within the legislation that city legislation could have addressed. The fiscal impacts, the cost of, if we had created a new system with an interactive database and an administrator for that system, the cost would have been $148,000 as a rough estimate, as well as an ongoing service fee of about $5,000 to $10,000. Right now, we pay IA Pro around $2,400 monthly for a service fee. Again, we won't know how much these costs are until we actually meet with them. And Brian Paquin is heading that meeting from our implementation group, and we should know something or have a meeting scheduled within the next week or two. House Bill 670, Chapter 59 adds language to the Maryland Public Safety Article 3-515, requiring departments to post complaints of the PIA process. This is a small feat. However, we do want to post them at all the doors in the police department in a good size where they're visible. A cost or a fiscal impact for this would be for professional framing for each of the photographs at about $500 to $1,000, and that would be a one-time cost. House Bill 670, Chapter 59 adds language to the Maryland Public Safety Article 3-207K to require testing of applicants and members for implicit bias. The language says that the commission will develop this test, which they have not yet for the implicit bias, but that we have to test officers coming onto the department, and we have to test officers on a continuing basis. The cost for annual training and possible costs for the academy training would be about $5,000 to $10,000 annually. House Bill 670, Chapter 59, adds language to the Maryland Public Safety Article 3-209A and E to require police officers to undergo mental health screenings and take agility tests. Again, I'll go over the costs. The cost for annual psychological screening to develop protocols for the psychological test could be anywhere in between $40,000 to $100,000. And then we would need to work in, which is why Corey Bradley is a member of our implementation team, and he will be looking at what this means for workmen's compensation cases and complaints. And what the law says is that every 2 years that our officers have to undergo psychological screening, and every year they have to undergo a physical agility test. And again, coming up, this is a large build, coming up with a testing platform, a way to send it to the department, or something that would comport with what the state wants. And again, the state has not given us any rules. We know that they are writing rules around this. We just have not received them yet. So this is going to be something really, really, really big. Of course, we have Corey Bradley. Of course, we involved Tricia from HR, and Tyra are both extensively working on what this looks like from an HR standpoint. Senate Bill 178. Senate Bill 178, Chapter 62, adds language to the general provisions 4-101, 4-311, 4-351, 4-351C, Section 2, classifying some internal investigation records as non-personnel records and allowing for the release of internal investigation records under certain conditions. It also provides for changes to Criminal Procedure Article 1-203A, which it provides standards for obtaining and serving no-knock search warrants and search and seizure warrants in general. It adds language to Public Safety Article 3-523, requiring reports on search and seizure warrants be submitted to the state, and Public Safety Article 3-523 of the State Government Article 6-106-2 establishes the Attorney General's Office as the investigator of police-involved deaths and serious injuries. The possible fiscal impact, again, we didn't see outside of the shirts, which is already calculated. We talked about that earlier. Certain provisions in the search and seizure protocol states that, again, the officers have to be readily identifiable. And on that note, we will draw your attention, give you some things for discussion after I finish the presentation.
I think we're nearly there. I think, yeah.
Almost done. I wanted you to have that ready for discussion. Senate Bill 600 adds language to Public Safety Article 3-521, restricting the purchase of certain surplus equipment. Senate Bill 71, Chapter 60, adds language to Public Safety Article 3-516 to create officer intervention systems. It adds language to Public Safety Article 3-524 for standards on use of force, and it adds language to Public Safety Article 3-524C to require a sanctity of life clause. A 3-year fiscal impact, we estimate that an impact could be from 182,500 in fiscal year 2022, 168,000 in fiscal year 2023, and 168,000 in fiscal year 2024. These are just estimates. They could be higher or lower. Okay. And before you all get into questions, the documents that I just handed you, we wanted to talk about that, again, the state has not written rules. So today, just today, we got rules governing House Bill 600, which creates that the Inspector General as the arbiter of any police-involved injuries or shootings. And so these are the rules that are written by the Attorney General, but they just came out today. So we have not begun to write our rules around these rules because we would need to add to a process. And we are now maybe about 2 weeks away from October 1st, which this is going to be, again, a monumentous task. We do have a plan of action to just, put this document out and then write a policy around it. But this is a big, big deal. This is a massive project. It really and truly is. Implementing the full scale of all the bills. I gave you a copy of, if all of you could look at that search and seizure policy. And so one of the things that we looked at when we looked at House Bill 178 that is due October 1st is we went through, looked at all our policies, realized that we did not have a search and seizure policy that stood out alone. We had some provisions inside other policies about search and seizures, which were maybe about a paragraph long. And so we thought it very, very important that we have a standalone search and seizure warrant policy to govern search and seizures. As you can see, the policy was very, very extensive, and I think that you'll like some of the provisions in it. One of the things that we did do is for a time such as this, that policy was vetted through our legal department for legal sufficiency. It actually went down to amongst our ranks, and so the officers could add input. And if you would ask, why would we do that? This is so even, some people added some comments and inputs that we took. Some people added some that we didn't take. But one thing that we got out of this and that other departments aren't getting, because we allowed them input in it, I know that you read it. We know you read it. We got a massive input from the officers. We hope to, in the future, when these policies that we have to write for this legislation are very tight. We're on very, very tight time schedules, but we will hope to, in the future, add a provision where the policy could go out for public comment for a week or two. Again, these are some of the gaps in the legislation that, we could have introduced in a city, policy or legislation that would be meaningful. With further ado, I will open the floor up for comments.
So the bad news for everyone is that Rhonda will not be here to help us address all this. So we're going to lose an amazing skill set. So we've been lucky to have you for the time that we can, and we're going to work you hard until November, right? We truly appreciate having you here. And Alderman Gay was next, and Alderman Savage.
Well, that's this is good. I'm glad that we can have this in writing. So thank you very, very much for putting the time into this. I had questions about the slide first, and I'll allow everybody to do the slide before I even ask about this. Do you have a total estimate? I know you mentioned some figures, 30,000 roughly for the uniform and identification pieces, about $152,000 for the actual policy board. I think you said if a judge is included in that. Is that correct?
Yeah, it could be about from $40,000 to $100,000, but that would be kind of a shared cost with the
Okay.
county.
So we still had to maybe put about 60 if it's, something, around that, yeah.
What I estimate that the city will do, and this is just me thinking outside the box, is that when a trial board is convened, the county will probably set a fee, and that we will have to pay that fee.
So, and are the attorneys, are the judges that are appointed to those boards selected by the county as well?
Yes, they are.
And so would your best recommendation to us as a body be to, recommend to our state delegation that an amendment be added to allow municipalities to add members to the county's boards?
I think that would be an excellent recommendation.
And I think we should do that because they are planning to go into session in December. And so we should probably do that fast, and that's something that all of us can still be a part of. And I think that's needed, at least like 2 members, right? What would you suggest? You're the expert, so.
Well, right now, they place 3 people on the trial board. If you wrote an amendment to add, another, and remember, one of those members has to be a peer officer, and then there's a civilian member. If you wanted to add 2 civilian members, then that would definitely have to be an amendment to add another, and then there would be that judge. One of the major concerns, and we don't know whether this is going to be addressed in the General Assembly, is the availability of the judges. Because they make it a judge. Are there going to be enough of them to seat these trial boards?
Yeah, I think it's at least as good that they added retired so that you could kind of dig into the bag if you have to.
If I can just clarify, just really quick on the trial board process, the law as it's currently written says each agency has to have a trial board, and then goes on to say that the judge is appointed by the county. So the clarification language, it's not sort of a given that we're going to have a trial board shared with Anne Arundel County. We very well may, because we may, discuss and come to an agreement with them. But as the law is written now, we're responsible for our own trial board. But if we were to create our own trial board separate from the counties, the county executive would still be appointing the judge. So that's where sort of the cleanup language would need to come in on the state level, is if they're going to allow each agency to come up with their own trial board, even though there is a provision that allows us to sort of piggyback with the counties, that then it should be the executive of that municipality to appoint the judge as opposed to the county executive.
So 2 questions then really quickly. I'm glad that you noted that because I'm thinking, well, then if we have our own agency, should we at least have an officer on the board at least? But so if we create our own, obviously then the cost would be significantly higher because we wouldn't be splitting it with the county, which is understandable. We'd have a police officer present from the Annapolis Police Department and 2 civilians, and then as it stands, the county executive would appoint the judge. If that amendment is submitted by the state delegation, let's say, and it does go through easy, whatever, and it is turned over to the executive of the city, i.e. the mayor, would that appointment still have to come before the council? Because typically all appointments that the mayor makes have to be approved by the council, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I would assume it would be sort of your normal boards and commissions type of process, but it's only limited to the judge.
Okay,
Because the
yeah.
other parts of the trial board are a civilian that's appointed by the Police Accountability Board, and then also a peer officer of the equal rank. So it would be just that judge portion.
And one of the things that I did want to say that, and I hate to interrupt you, is right now, the way the law is written, it's on a volunteer basis. It's on a volunteer basis. So, the judge would have to volunteer, be vetted by the county. The county would then say, yes, you're appointed to the trial boards. What I surmise is going to happen is, and this is where the cost will come into us, is costing them. They can set the fee. If the judge says, I want to be paid, county will set the fee. We won't have any say in that. And then they will come back, and then they will give us a bill and say, here, you have your trial board, here's your judge, and this is your cost.
That's interesting. Very. And we have to do that by, I think you mentioned a couple of deadlines the last time you were here. You were saying October.
This is October 1st.
Exactly. So that goes into effect, and then the following June, I think you mentioned.
July 1st.
Okay. Yeah. See, I was paying attention.
Yes, you were. And I'm glad that you are paying attention.
Of course.
Of the time frame, Alderman, because, in retrospect, some people will say like, oh, this is next year. That does not give us a whole lot of time.
Yeah.
This is going to require MOUs with the county.
Because even October snuck up on us too. Mm-hmm. And so I'm assuming that in the background, there have been some conversation and negotiations maybe between the Office of Law and whomever the point person is for the county's agency representing this process right now?
So I have been in contact with, of course, the AA County Police Department, and Lynn Farrell made contact from our implementation group, just made contact with county government. And so we're supposed to meet sometime either next week or the week after to go over what their plans are and what their structure looks like.
Awesome, thank you, and thank you for this too. I do have a couple questions after this afterwards.
Thank you, Alderman Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. McCoy, sorry to hear you're leaving. You've been incredibly helpful during the entire process with the state legislation and then our own that we're working on. So thank you for all the time that you've continued to put in on all of these efforts.
I do want to add that I was selected as a candidate, but I am undergoing a background, and depending on what the offer is, will be whether or not I leave.
Okay. Well, good. And I'm also heartened to hear that there's been a task force that's been set up to look at all the the commitments that have come through the state legislation. I'm still not entirely clear on everything, and I'm kind of looking to the city manager on this one. I don't know if we need to pass a code change, but I'd really like to get these presentations 24 hours before the work sessions. There's just a lot to go through. But my one question on the one of the board, accountability board, and so those do apply to us, because the wording that was up just states county law enforcement, doesn't even say city.
It says each county has to have one. So every county, regardless of how many law enforcement agencies exist within the county has one police accountability board. So, Crofton, Annapolis, all sort of, I guess, feed into the county's police accountability board. And there isn't like an option to have multiple within a county based on the way that the law is written right now.
And that board has jurisdiction over all the municipalities or jurisdictions within the...
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And there's nothing in there, I guess, like Alderman Gay said, to require any kind of representation from those communities, be it from the government or those municipalities themselves?
There's no requirement in there, which is why, Rhonda and Lynn Farrow have had discussions with the county to sort of give the city a buy-in into those police accountability boards and enter those discussions to allow for city representation on the boards.
Okay. Yeah, if you could send that presentation to us, that'd be helpful. So follow-up questions. But
and I apologize. I did send the presentation along and copies of these documents, but I sent them to Kia, and she's not here today, and I didn't know that.
Okay.
So I apologize.
Well, thank you. And so the other comment, I guess, has more to do with the finances. I'd like to, and I don't know if this might be best directed to the city manager, but I'd like to see some alternatives, in terms of the ID costs in particular, because well, to number the things, there might be alternatives. For the IDs, I know the HR has their own ID machine, so could we utilize that to produce these IDs? And in terms of the agility test and training, rather than spending, I think it was 40 to 100K to develop our own, we should talk to the county. Maybe we could do it jointly, or we could just adopt their training that they develop, since they have a much larger budget, into our program rather than reinventing the wheel. So again, just those kind of things I'd like to see, because I just feel like they weren't really presented in those, but maybe this is not the right stage. I know we'll have to have a lot more discussions about the finances as we go along.
So what I do want to, add is that the accountability boards, the trial board, and that charging committee, because we keep forgetting about that charging committee.
Which committee?
A charging committee. So when charges are brought up, on an officer, it will have to go to the county charging committee, which is appointed by that accountability board. They will come down and they will make recommendations, and they will say that, they could either up or lower the charges. And what cannot happen, what the state's law says, is that the police chief can't lower, what the charging committee recommends. Mm-hmm. So there are the three bodies that we want to have input in. We definitely, if we're talking about discipline and charging, Annapolis would want to voice at least one member on that charging committee, and I think it sets it at 3 members as well. But five members of that charging committee, we would, I would think that we will want 1 or 2 members from the Annapolis area to be represented on that charging committee. But again, it is now, we're about to go into October. We are, very close to, 9 or, around, 9.5, 10 months to complete all of this. This is, you talk to the county, work out a process, provide for funding, write rules, write MOUs, train our officers, and be ready by July 1st. And again, these are one of the things that that worry me, and why I have been I know that ad nauseum I have been talking about this legislation, because it's massive and it requires a lot of work. The search and seizure policy that you're looking at right now, as you can see, is very, very extensive, and provides for just about every aspect of from getting the warrant to the service to the return. It provides for. That took us 90 days to write that policy, get it down, send it through the Office of Legal, which, in the past, we have written policy and wrote it from just a law enforcement officer's perspective. But Chief Jackson has charged that every policy that we write from now on will have a legal review, be vetted down to the officers, so we at least know that they're reading it. And in the near future, we hope to. Right now, this is just so tight, but we would hope to have a civilian look at the policies in draft, and a comment period when we write them. But this is massive. And if it took us 90 days to do that policy, Ms. Berger and I can, she works on an implementation group. There are at least 4 or 5 policies that we're going to have to either write or massively change, one of them being use of force. This work is going to be extremely extensive. So we really, really need the council and Your Honor to really put your heads together and start thinking about what cost look like, because we just, and discuss that early, because we don't have time. You know, 1 July, we have to be on board. And what the state says is that if we're not compliant, we could forfeit a lot of things. Not some compliance with certain provisions of that article could, you know, cause a decertification, you know, for our officers, or hamper our ability to garner grants. One massive grant that we reported on within the last budget is we get almost $1 million, for just for officers, you know, for their salaries. We don't want to put ourselves in jeopardy to lose that.
Are they mandating that the city council has to pass the agility test? Just kidding.
If they are, I'm going to run with, you know, Alderman Gay.
You got it. You got that.
Yeah, but and then even that, Your Honor, we just don't know what that, you know, right now, the law is silent on what that physical agility test looks like. The last time that I did speak with a member of the training commission, they were saying, like, you know, well, hey, you know, we do have the agility protocol, you know, that we already have, which is what they give officers when they come on to the department. And I can tell you, as a retired officer, I retired at the age of 54 years old. No, you know, I was not I cannot run, jump, and do some of the things that I did when I was 27 years old when I joined the police department. And neither can some of those officers. Some of them have taken hits, you know, here, and have had, you know, some injuries. We're hoping that gets taken into effect. But, you know, with the way that we interpret the law as it's written right now, is that the city would come up with its own provision for what that looks like. Again, these are kind of the gaps inside legislation that I was hoping that individuals would take a look at, and then write legislation to address the gaps in the state legislation for reform. And this is one of them.
Thank you. Alderman Tierney?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I guess I should congratulate you. It's a very disappointing loss. I was trying to keep track of the numbers. I lost you at 182,000, but are you saying that we're looking at 300,000 of what this could be?
Right now,
Yeah, that's
you know,
right,
kind of, you know, when we learned about the that IA Pro had a program already, we just don't know what the cost is going to be.
Okay.
And I'm sure that there's going to be an increased cost for an increased maintenance cost. You know, I'm more comfortable with you know, the estimates of, you know, the 182 that factored in like a build of a system. I think, you know, that if we stay within, you know, these numbers, you know, we'll have a clearer cost estimate once we start getting rules from the state in and around what we need to do. Again, that number could increase or decrease, but I'm comfortable with around, give or take, around that 182. But we did not budget for that 182 in this budget cycle, as you know. So, you know, that, you know, we would have to factor that in fiscal 2022. And then work in provisions for 23 and 24.
Right, okay. So 182.5, which we don't have allocated in next year's budget, but you would need. But in presenting your estimates, there appears to be some unknowns, some guesswork, some
Yes.
options that we could explore. You know, is there a conversation going back and forth saying, well, gee, you know, we already provide this, you know, on traffic stops. We already have this identification that I'm hearing that what you do now is not sufficient. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, in that implementation meeting, which occurs every week, and you know, I want to applaud the members of the implementation group. When I came together and asked them, you know, that we needed to form that task force, they all came very, very swiftly, and they meet consistently with me every Wednesday. These are some of the discussions that we have. We did have some discussions around. We know that Trish Hopkins has spoken to our current psychologist who does the psychological profiles for when an officer comes on, and discussed some cost factors. We went over the language of the law again with Carrie, you know, on what that means. Does this have to be a professional? Again, I think that when the General Assembly comes back, these are some of the questions that they're going to answer, that, you know, this person has to be a trained psychologist, you know, to administer this test, and that the physical agility test, it did not give us over to the training commission. You know, however, it just said we had to have the physical agility test, which then the city would have to create one for the officers. And again, you know, coming together, thinking about this as, you know, as on a whole, you know, what would be the best avenue to go in for what that test looks like and what we want to see in it to meet the state law. Again, that's a sizable gap, you know, in the state legislation that was not addressed, that could be addressed by the city.
I know we've talked about the strategy with the state. I mean, basically, you know, post the George Floyd, their approach is more accountability and reporting and training and all that. But it's been a tough time. 182,500 would provide us how many police officers approximately?
That is just for logistical costs.
No. I'm just asking that.
Oh, that
bucket of money, how many
182?
police officers would that get us?
Yes, probably.
Yeah, I mean, this is. I know it's required. It's just so disappointing that we need police officers desperately, and you know that, you know,
Yes, ma'am.
and so I can only say, you know, as my colleague Alderman Savage did, is if we can look at, you know, alternates and talk to the county on shared stuff, on grants or whatever. But I mean, the priority, I mean, we've met and you've said that you feel like, you know, you are accountable and you are meeting the test of what's required. But at the same time, you're going to have to add money to do more that you may or may not need to do. It's just very unfortunate because we need police officers and we should focus on that.
We're hoping that the state includes, you know, other provisions in their brine offerings for grants next year. We had our grant coordinator actively looking for when we were starting with that database, you know, to, you know, can we find a grant, you know, to fund it. Unfortunately, you know, we found some grants, but because of the criterion within those grants, we didn't meet certain criterion to be able to apply, you know,
Right.
to be able to apply for them. So it's kind of tricky. We know what we need the grants for, but right now, especially within the federal system, you know, the grants have gotten very, very steep and come with a lot of criterion to be able to qualify for them. And then you have to realize that We're one small agency in a whole universe, which the universe of Maryland, that's going to be trying to apply to get some of these grants. And again, this is, it is strange, I would say, that, we had a massive legislation of this magnitude, and that the funding for the legislation was not provided for by the state legislation.
Well, let us know, as Alderman Gay said, please let us know how we can help in getting, the state General Assembly involved, in, Senator Elfreth, et cetera. Thanks.
Thank you. Now we have another presentation. Any quick questions, anybody? Alderman Gay?
Yeah, thank you. So, and I don't know if they've come up with answers for this yet. Well, I got a couple of things. My first thing, this is so random, but you said the agility test and you were coming in the department at 27. When you are hired as a police department, are you required to be tased? Is that a thing?
What, for that?
Like when you get on the force, so they were just to test now?
I can't speak for Annapolis right now, but I can say that when we first got the tasers, when I was a member of the Baltimore Police Department, yes, they did tase you, not directly, but they had to lead, and then you would all hold hands, and
I just didn't know if that was TV or real. So you really do got to get tased. I'm terrified of tasers. Number two, if the officer does not pass the agility test, assuming that they are, either put to the desk or have to retire, we still would have to cover that, pension costs and stuff like that, or because they failed the agility test, would it be a circumstance that we wouldn't be required to pay that because technically the assessment was failed?
Well, see, this is the things that the state is silent on. It just says that we have to give them an agility test. The rules about that test is going to come from the city.
Okay. I think that's it for that. Thank you so much again.
Okay, that's excellent information, and you're right, the timeline is very soon. So thank you. We appreciate it, and we're excited for your promotion. So congratulations. Yeah.
Yes, if you have any questions to ask me about the general order, and I just wanted to note, Alderman Savage, please take a look at that, the other documents that I gave you, that those are the documents that are directly from the state and rules that they have written from the Attorney General's office, who will be handling all police-involved shootings. There's information in there that you need to know. One of the rules is that body-worn camera release is the responsibility of the state. We have to get their permission, the Attorney General, because they take over those cases. We do not have control over that. Please read those rules very, very carefully.
It's just one, I'm sorry.
Sure.
You mentioned that there would be a general order for use of force too. Is the deadline on that the 1st as well?
Yes, we have to make changes to the use of force, but
Okay.
we would hope to have the changes right now in our implementation group. We have gone down all of the requirements for the legislation, and we've set timelines. The use of force policy, because it's such a massive overwrite, I can't recall the date on it, but we kind of set it into starting to craft it. I think like either it was November or December of this year to begin to try to craft it, because our hope is that we don't want to wait until July 1st to have it done. We want to have it done well before the due date, just as the search and seizure warrant policy was completed before well before the due date.
And with this, the one for the search and seizures, I think that everything is pretty, cut and dry, straightforward. There are tiny things that I have questions about, but we can talk about that off the line for the sake of time. But this is very well written, so thank you again.
Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you to the task force as well. I think one of the members is right here. Thank you.
You're welcome. Crap.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. City Attorney?
The next item on the agenda is ID 19921 Hillman Garage and City Dock Project Update.
Thank you. Please come forward.
There we go.
Great, thanks. And what can I press? Just this?
Just that button, you're on.
Right or left?
That button.
This one? Okay. It's not.
Oh. There you go. You were also.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to update you at the council and the community who's watching on the progress that's taking place with City Dock. Today, we are going to share with you the schematic designs for Hillman Garage, the parking and mobility strategy, particularly for the interim construction period, and the communication approach to reach all Annapolitans as well as our visitors. Ivan Dooland, project manager from AMRP, and Eric Sutton, communication specialist from Plus PR, are with me today, and we look very forward to your, okay, wrong direction. Just a sec. Next direction. Aha. Back one. Oh, that's how you're doing it. Okay, this seems beyond my technical capabilities. For the public that is joining us today for the first time, this incredible image is an image of Annapolis's waterfront, and we hope that will be within about 4 years. It's a waterfront that's resilient, with flood barriers and incredible stormwater management, and you've got a terraced public open space with sweeping views of the bay. All of this replaces the blacktop that is there today. So that's where we are all working from. The need to move forward, we say this at every presentation, but it's so important to remember, it's urgent. Just 2 years ago, this image is from October 2 years ago during the boat show, when the boat show was flooded, downtown was flooded, and we're looking at flooding 51 days a year. The other reason that it is so urgent, in addition to the flooding, is anybody who parked in Hillman today knows that the garage is dilapidated, it needs to be replaced. We need a safe and efficient new garage that will have much greater parking capacity. We are in the pre-development phase, which started in January and goes through January of 2022. This is the study and design phase that is before the actual construction. And that phase starts, the construction phase and development phase starts next January. There have been a lot of tremendous progress and movement on getting this garage built in the last few months in particular. First of all, we've heard from a CBRE, which is a world-recognized development and financial experts, who have said to the city that the feasibility analysis for the new garage, they have confirmed it, and they are recommending that the city move forward, which is tremendous news. Secondly, we're going to share today with you all of the schematic drawings for Hillman. And third, we have been moving forward on the program development for City Dock. What's important when you see these slides today for Hillman Garage is remembering how the design got to where it is. And all of this list of 20 public work sessions, meetings with the 92-member City Dock Action Committee, meetings with Council, Historic Preservation Commission, Planning Commission, and perhaps most importantly, the downtown businesses and residents with on-site stakeholder meetings. It's that input that has shaped the design. The design has changed significantly during the last few months based on what we have heard from all of these stakeholder groups. And we commit to keeping all of the interested residents and businesses involved, informed before and during construction. There has also, because of all this input, there has been a lot of progress toward entitlements. The Historic Preservation Commission has had 4 work sessions. In July, they recommended that the schematic design for Hillman Garage move forward, and they will ultimately be granting a certificate of approval for the garage. The Planning Commission grants a site design approval. Tonight will be their 3rd workshop. They are supporting and refining the design direction. And with that said, today's focus, Ivan is going to talk to you about the garage design first, parking and mobility second, and then you will hear from Eric Sutton on the communication strategy.
Thank you, Eileen, and I want to thank the entire City Council for the ability to come here today and provide an update on the projects and get into what for engineers like myself is the very interesting thing for these projects, and that is the design and how that's evolved and some solutions that we've come up with, which we hope will just continue to spur the enthusiasm we've seen for these projects over the last year or so. So today, just a brief update, kind of where we are. As Eileen mentioned, we've gone through the feasibility review, outlined the programmatic definition by which we're going to continue the development of the Hillman garage design, and similarly for City Dock. So there's a lot of work that has been completed kind of behind the scenes with the incredible team we have of various companies as part of AMRP. We just rounding out kind of where what the conclusions of the feasibility analysis were, and that some main key takeaways is that a Hillman garage design that we're going to show some of here today of 590 spaces is optimally sized based on the demand and demand forecast that we have at this point in time. The forecast for revenues for Hillman Garage more than pays for the garage construction, but also will be providing the city a substantial concession payment. And from a technical perspective, both Hillman Garage and City Dock project are feasible and ready to move forward. So that's some big and important takeaways for where we are now compared to where we were at my first presentation less than a year ago, I think, to City Council. Most of the focus today is going to be on Hillman Garage, but recognizing that not necessarily everybody shares the excitement of garage design as I potentially do. I also wanted to show a couple of images of City Dock and the water and how that design has been evolving. This image here shows an overview of the plans and the concept or schematic design for City Dock. Some of the key items you'll see is the continuous promenade around the entire area on the water side that will be raised up to the existing bulkhead at the inner portion of Ego Alley, which is 5 feet. You'll see what is currently Donner parking lot has been converted into a park space to provide some shading on that side, as well as complement the large city dock park on the north side. The southern boundary of most of the resiliency improvements and features are located on 110 Compromise, but it's important to note that there's still the possibility to include additional resiliency improvements and bulkheads improvements going further out Ego Alley on the southern side. So it's a comprehensive design that's been worked through. There's still a lot of work left to do on City Dock, but we're very pleased with the overall design direction that we're headed down. Just showing here a couple of images before I get into next steps. You'll see to the left here what or how we're approaching resiliency improvements as part of the City Dock design and park layout. So you'll see the broad promenade, which is at the same height as I mentioned, again at 5 feet. And then you have along the edge of the entire park space a seat wall that will provide the public spaces to sit and enjoy the water and be close to the water. And then you see we've incorporated effectively planter boxes or a planter area as we step up to what is currently the assumed ultimate kind of what we're referring to as kind of the flood design height of 8 feet to provide kind of long-term protection for the city. And then the park space a little bit lower at 6.5 feet, which reduces the overall visual impact of the park from kind of how high it is located at City Dock, but also provides an area, kind of a discrete area around the park, which provides, again, more spaces to sit and enjoy what will very much be kind of a large green lung for the residents and visitors of Annapolis around City Dock. So we're trying to be as creative as we can be and cost-effective as we can be in the design of City Dock to incorporate and kind of hide the resiliency improvements so that when the public visits the area, they see the space and the amenities, not a focus on the specific resiliency components that are included. Some of the things that we'll be looking to do is continue to progress the design, work with the Historic Preservation Commission and Planning Commission and other stakeholders, as we have done intensively on Hillman. We now have a design for City Dock that enables us to do the same type of outreach and undertake that same development process. Sea level design projections and design heights. There is some work that needs to be done in coordination with the Naval Academy. Another thing that we will be evaluating is, together with the city, is timing for when some of the improvements are incorporated. As you'll see from the image to the right on the slide, is what our current design horizon is of out to 2050. Depending upon sea level rise and storm and precipitation projections, there may not be the need for the full build out at day one. The question becomes when over the course of that planning horizon, will there be a requirement for the full 8 feet to be incorporated. So that might enable us to stage some of the improvements in time, but still TBD, but something that I wanted to flag because it is a little bit of a potentially a little bit of a different approach as we're trying to be as cost effective and not do things before we have to as well, just to minimize the impact and duration of construction. So that's a very quick run through of City Dock. Now the other important piece of the project is Hillman Garage and an update on the design. So what we've been doing is moving the design forward in cooperation with the city and city staff, stakeholders, and the Historic Preservation Commission and the Planning Commission, as you saw from Eileen's slide of all the meetings that we have had, and our design is very much influenced by that work. So the current design, as mentioned, has 590 spaces over 5 parking levels, including a top or open parking top floor, similar to the current Hillman Garage, but one more level. And we're able to do that within and stay within the envelope and the height restrictions that are in place and govern the property, which we're very excited and happy about that we were able to thread that needle. The spaces that are removed, current parking spaces at City Dock that are removed based on the current conceptual design have been incorporated into Hillman Garage. So there's no net loss of parking. Quite the contrary, there's actually an increase. And that's actually with the conversion of the Donner parking lot into a park. There will be, for those that are familiar with Hillman Garage today, it's going to be the same entry and exit points. But we're going to be using gateless access technology, which enables people to pull in and out of the garage more effectively without having to stop and wait for a gate to come down and open, which will also help with kind of traffic. Everybody's probably experienced traffic going out of parking garages after events. And so we're trying to remove as much friction as we can. We're also very excited about some of the environmental and green features that we've been able to incorporate into the design, both currently as well as kind of future proofing of the garage. So as you'll see on next couple of slides, we've been able to incorporate a PV panels on the top floor of the garage or open level of the garage. We have included several EV charging stations and are as well including conduit or the ability to add additional EV charging stations in the future. We've also incorporated a fair amount of bike racks into the garage, as well as the design helps reactivate Gorman Street and make that a nice area to walk through with a substantial amount of tree and other plants along the way, providing a kind of a safe space for pedestrians to pass. So here is an overview of the garage, and I didn't think I'd necessarily say this at the outset because garages aren't necessarily known as the most beautiful things in the world, but sadly only birds will be able to enjoy this view when it's done. Yeah. And you can see how the garage is kind of broken up, use different design languages to break up the bulk of the garage so that it fits within the context that it sits here in the historic portion of Annapolis. You can see the sizable solar array on the PV panels on the roof. It will help twofold. One is the ability to provide renewable energy to the grid and also renewable energy to charge the electric vehicles that are parked in the garage. But it also provides some shading for the vehicles that are parked up there. That we know that is an issue for parking on garages that are under the beaming sun. It could get quite hot, so it will help with that. And another thing that we're excited about is lighting the top floor of the garage with string lights. So you'll see some white poles on the perimeter of the garage. And what we're hoping to be able to do is avoid having to put up large light poles, but can get by with just these light poles on the perimeter, which will then have string lights running back and forth to the canopy. And one of the things that we think this can do is help make the top floor of Hillman Garage a space that can be used for more purposes. So it can be a more inviting space for outdoor events and things of that nature, and can serve more than one purpose of just being a parking space.
Was that Gavin's idea?
That's a great, I love that idea.
I have to give credit on that to one. We're starting to joke. One of the architects may or may not have a vested interest in a string lighting company somewhere, because they tend to come up and really help with the ambiance. But
And will under the solar panels, will that be waterproof under there?
there will be a gap between the solar panels currently. We have not. It's a little bit. We're going to be working on those type of detailed designs, but most likely it will just be open panels, so to say. As you can see here, another thing that we are very happy and pleased that we're able to do is actually shrink the footprint of the overall garage compared to the existing one. So the garage is moved back further south on Gorman Street without encroaching, quite the contrary, on the southern side of the garage towards the properties there. So it provides more space around the garage. It's pretty small, but you might see up towards the Gorman Street, towards Main Street, as you drive in. That's quite a narrow turn there currently. We've been able to make that a wider and more easily managed turn for vehicles to make, and particularly larger vehicles like delivery trucks, which we know have been an issue in the past. We have also provided a fair amount of, or a lot of work and effort has gone into looking at planting and use of local and native plants in and around the garage to maintain and improve the kind of park-like feel that you can have walking around the garage today. So we are, as mentioned, very excited about the garage design direction. From a more usual non-seagull view, I should say, is here down Gorman on street level, how the garage will appear looking in Gorman Street. You can see we've again broken the different design along the garage, help break it up and make it less massive than it otherwise could feel as you're walking along the street. Here you can see from the other side of Gorman Street the openness of the garage itself, which we've done for a couple of reasons. One, it enables us to avoid sprinklering the garage, which adds just complication and cost, frankly, for a garage of this size that's open air. It will make the garage feel safer and more inviting rather than have it be closed in with kind of dark corners of a parking garage. We're trying to avoid that at all costs. And it also enables the garage to be utilized as I think I mentioned before, the first floor can have some dual purposes and host potential pop-up type markets for periods of time when the parking pressure is less in the city. So that it's overall quite a departure from kind of what is there today, and we think is really working to serve kind of multiple purposes for the city as a whole. The next item that we want to give a quick briefing on is parking and mobility, and particularly talk about parking and mobility during construction. We are naturally aware of the concern that people have about what will happen to the kind of parking system and availability and local streets as the garage comes down. Starting kind of at a wide level, and then I'll kind of go further and further and then kind of more details around the garage and the mobility solutions. But at a high level, a couple of important things to note is just the parking system utilization, if you look at it kind of holistically, is that the takeaway is that the parking system, while it varies a lot across the city as a whole, there's no shortage of parking space and parking availability. There are certain items or certain areas of the city and certain types of parking that do have a higher degree of usage, where the utilization rates are such that it can definitely at peak times feel like there's not enough parking. So naturally around City Dock and Hillman Garage and the middle of summer with a lot of travel, it will experience a lot of demand and which will feel like there's a need for much more parking. But if you look at the system as a whole, it's actually fairly well balanced. And I say this for two reasons. One is it enables the city, at least the city's parking system, to absorb most of the projected growth going forward without having to do many more capital projects after Hillman, but it also means that a more targeted approach for addressing kind of peak periods of concern is what's going to be needed during construction. So looking at kind of the end state first. So after Hillman Garage is completed and the work at City Dock is completed, there will be a net increase in off-street parking spaces in the kind of wider City Dock area. At Hillman Garage itself, will add about 165 spaces, and then there are a fair amount of spaces being removed by naturally converting what is currently a parking lot at City Dock into a park space. So net, we're looking at about 40 to 50 or so off-street parking spaces between the construction of the redevelopment of Hillman Garage and the changes at City Dock. In addition to that, there are some areas by which can free up additional space kind of in the area, which is the area with most demand. And that is items like potentially moving employees to other garages is something that can be explored. And I also want to emphasize that none of these projects in and of themselves change the inventory and the number of spaces that are on street, either residential or metered spaces.
Yeah, if I could just add, during the public meetings that we have, we always get asked about the market space and the spaces on Main Street that are being used for dining. So even if you take those into account, we still come out positive. It's 19 spaces at market space that we're talking about not having available, and it's I think about a dozen on Main Street currently. So even if you add those in, we're still we're still positive when the new garage is built.
I'll just let them finish it. How much?
Mobility, and we can run through it quite quickly. Another.
A quick question here.
I'll go until
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let them finish them all.
Yeah.
We'll hear. Thank you.
So next, after looking at kind of the end state, now looking at kind of what's going to happen during construction. So the key takeaway is that there's excess capacity within kind of a mile radius or so of existing of Hillman Garage, an ability to absorb a lot of the users that would otherwise use Hillman Garage, have a space, can be absorbed within kind of the existing parking system. The question is how do you utilize the excess capacity with minimal inconvenience? And that's what we've been working on for a mobility solution and kind of interim solution. The key takeaway is that key message is that different users will have different travel patterns and needs. For some, it's going to be information and awareness that Hillman Garage is coming down. For others, it is going to be more on avoiding any confusion regarding wayfinding. And for some, and particularly during peak demand periods, there's going to be could be a need for a mobility solution to help utilize this excess capacity. What we are looking at and developing now is an interim mobility plan that combines a kind of fixed schedule and routes to utilize that excess capacity and or a dedicated stadium, Navy Stadium lot route with off-peak or off-peak on-demand type local shuttle service in order to utilize that capacity that we would be then building up with the fixed schedule. So a fixed schedule is more effective when there is, at peak periods, when there is a kind of a discrete demand. An on-demand solution is naturally better off-peak when there's more intermittent demand. What we are trying to do also with the on-demand service is avoid or reduce the amount of very kind of local travel within kind of the area. So folks going to restaurants locally, moving around. If we can avoid that car usage and parking, that can take away a fair amount of the pressure. So that's why we're combining this fixed versus on-demand schedule. I think it's again, and Eric will talk about it here briefly. It's matching tools and approaches with different user groups. Short term, it is things as simple as removing signs to Hillman, making sure databases and wayfinding databases are updated so that people don't use Google Maps, try to park at a Hillman Garage that is not there and available. Because for visitors coming out of town, that is often where what they do. They search for the city or location they're going and look at where is the closest parking. For an interim period, over an interim period, it is providing information about the mobility options and signage so that people know where to go. And long term, it is integrating signage for Hillman Garage and around City Dock and the downtown area so that it's clear for people where they can find parking capacity. Yeah.
If I could just add, one of the driving principles that we have given this team is equity. Equity in access to downtown. We're looking at microtransit, and we are having them look at ways to make sure communities, whether it be Eastport or Parole, that there is some access to downtown that is easy and that is equitable, and most likely using microtransit. Thank you.
Excuse me. One thing that we did want to mention and spend some time on is an update on the contractor involvement and MBDBSB participation and what we're currently what our current plan is and how that is coming along. So we are taking a very proactive approach to get as much participation as we can. Virtual outreach events have already been conducted. As the design now is in a spot where it's to the point where we can develop design packages or specific big bid packages. That is being done so as we speak. We have already engaged MBDB firms on the project for some of the initial work that has been undertaken on site. What is key for us now that we have the packages and the timeline is being solidified is to get the word out and to make it easy for people to register their interest. So we will be on the project website. Interest form will be uploaded where people can provide the information, can find information about the different bid packages and register their interest. This will also be part of the communications plan around the project, which Eric will speak to here in a second. And we are taking the approach of opening up for as many recognized programs as we can in Maryland. That is something that can be a big hurdle for different companies being registered in one county versus another versus state registration, and we want to make this easy and make it so that there's not a huge administrative burden to participate in the project. We're also going to have a focus on kind of what I'd almost call hyper-local participation where possible for these packages within the city and Anne Arundel County, even down to things like if we have events catering from local companies, et cetera. So this is something that is important to the entire AMRP team, and I'm very pleased with the work that Whiting Turner and the designers have done to proactively start engagement. Recognizing that we are running short on time, I think I'll just say that we're still tracking for a start for Hillman Garage, demolition on Hillman Garage in late January. And we are working towards completing that within 15, 16 months or so, and to phase the work on City Dock so that there's not a lot of overlapping construction impact, which we know is a concern. And just to emphasize, we will not be impacting parking at City Dock until parking is available in the new Hillman Garage. So with that, I will skip forward to you, Eric.
Great. Thanks, Simon. So obviously, with construction, beginning potentially in January, communications with stakeholders will be, vital over the next several months. And what we try to do is break it down into really 4 stages. And right now, we're in the planning stage. One, making sure that we identify all the folks that are potentially impacted, making sure that we come up with the right vehicles and the right approach, the right timing and the right message to be able to communicate the project details and construction information to them. Also, as I was talking about, the mitigation solutions and making sure that we're able to, fine tune those and package them up, and what we call snackable content. I mean, one of the things in today's age is that a lot of people don't read anymore, they scan. So everything that we create from a public information standpoint has to be very easily digestible and quickly understood. So that's the main thing we're focusing on now is the timeline and rollout of the comms plan. Secondly, stakeholder outreach. So obviously, residents and businesses, they have a very vested interest. in both the Hillman Garage and a long-term city dock plan. So, the initial outreach that we do once we pull together our comms plan, but we're really focusing on them because we really feel the importance of, building this echo chamber and educating, not only, city dock residents and businesses, but also state government, even, tourism and travel agencies that bring people here, is that we really need to educate them and make them, kind of an echo chamber for us as we get closer towards construction. And then once we've educated folks over the next couple of months on the process moving forward and around construction, is doing a marketing blitz and letting people know. I mean, and I'll show you on my next slide. But what typically with these construction projects, particularly in today's age, is a lot of people don't pay attention until it impacts them, and that's one of the challenges everyone faces. And so, so a lot. January will be a really January, December will be a really busy month in terms of educating, because that's when people are start to pay attention when it's imminent, or even for a lot of people, it's going to be after the garage closes, and how do we make sure the signage works right and people can get to to accessible parking. And then once construction begins and the garage is closed, always assessing and constantly refining our message. And if we've got to add in additional communications to make sure that we're hitting all of the stakeholders and folks that are coming into Annapolis and in Annapolis, we do that. Next slide. So here's just a typical pattern in terms of when and when people start to care and the opportunities to inform them. As I mentioned, a lot of people, and this is just a challenge and just way of life. A lot of us, are guilty of it. Is we don't start to pay attention until it impacts us, and so we really believe that month and a half is going to be really critical in terms of having a very robust marketing plan, getting the signage right. But even just as important is really the communications that we do, over the next couple of months, and making sure that all the businesses, residents, the people that need to plan ahead, that they're educated on it. Whether it's Visit Annapolis and some transportation services, is making sure that they have the information that they need. So once construction starts, that they know the solutions in place. Those are the key.
That's it. Next slide. Thank you. I know it's been a long afternoon. We welcome your questions, your comments.
You got Alderman Gay first.
Thanks. I have a couple of questions. My first is as it relates to the city dock updated concept. I guess the best view is on page 5. How can we be sure that this will allow us to be active and continuing to bring, tourists and create events and a unique vibe at the city dock? Is this space smaller? And what new attractions are included that we possibly can't see here? I see like a little tent area. Is this venue big enough for maybe concerts, or what's the?
Yes. Yeah, no, that's a very, very good question, and I promise to come back and have many more pretty images of City Dock. But you're right. One of the things that we've focused on is how can the space be utilized in different ways. So around kind of midway through from what the residual parking is around Dock Street, you'll see a small kind of bricked, or it's not that small actually, a bricked area next to the pump house. And that one of the things that we've been working on is kind of utilizing that space as almost like an amphitheater, because the park space itself is higher up. You have stairs leading up to it around that area, so that could be used for concerts and performances and things of that nature. Similarly, on the area all the way to the right on the image, where you have the shade structures, that area can be, different type of games and activities can be included and will be defined in more detail as we move forward. But there's also stairs on that side of the park which provide that area to be used for events like concerts and things of that as well.
And if I could add, Alderman Gay, I think there's an opportunity here for us, meaning council and us, to go back out to the community. We heard a lot when the city dock plan was being developed. We did a lot of outreach. But now, as it's getting fine-tuned, the focus has been on Hillman. Later in the fall and into the winter, the focus will be on the fine-tuning design. And I think that's the point where we ought to be working together to figure out ways to hear from. We definitely will always be hearing from the downtown residents, the downtown merchants, but what about, Parole, Eastport, Hilltop, the rest of the city? So I think that's something we should do, working with council members as we get into later fall.
Thank you. Yeah, I know the splash pad, all of that stuff is, stuff that's been talked about and just is unique in cities, and it brings a modern and urban feel. And I just think that if we're going to spend the money now, we should do it and, just try to create a destination place. Question still on slide 5. I noticed in another slide that there seemed to be like a bus port terminal there where, they can come up and whip around. What's the traffic plan? I've expressed great concern in this compromised Randall Dock area. I think it's a mess. It's horrible. And I think that also as it relates to some of the parking suggestions made here, where you're saying that, there's 69% occupancy during the week, all of that. I think that can be true, but I think, are you from Annapolis? I think you have to be in the city for a week and realize that that's really not true. Because just even getting here, riding up and down, you got 50 parents from St. Mary's just popping a squat on side the road. Traffic is backed up down. You got the delivery. It's just such a mess, and there's no order. It's chaos. And so how will the plan to redo the downtown area, affect that traffic plan and coordination? That's my first question, and then I really want to get into the mobility too. I'm extremely interested in that.
I think one of the big issues that we in the city have made attempts at, but really haven't optimized, for want of a better term, is how to message to people, so the visitors. So if you're coming into the city at 2:30 on a Wednesday afternoon, the last place you want to be is Duke of Gloucester. You will never get out. So we've talked about the messaging. That, I think, is absolutely critical, so that people not only know where to park, they also know where to stay away from. And they need to be directed there. Obviously, and I'll let Ivan address this, so we're looking certainly at trying to capture a lot of the visitors at Park Place, but there also will be some closer in options that are not immediately in downtown, but adjacent. So the messaging becomes critical to get those trips where they don't even, remember, everybody's been coming down Duke of Gloucester. We don't even want them near Duke of Gloucester. Here, Ivan.
The thing I would add was maybe that, parking needs to be looked at in context with traffic, maintenance of traffic, and traffic management, and they affect each other and cause some of the types of issues that you just mentioned. This design is currently at a kind of, it's still fairly early stage, and it's first kind of now that we have something that's well enough developed to go out and have more discussions about how do things like delivery vehicles and programs and get implemented. We know from different stakeholders that there's an interest in having tour buses come down. There are in some ways, some of those things are a little bit competing with each other when it comes to use of streetscape. But that's something that we can first to start looking at now in more detail, and how do these different things get incorporated.
I'm sorry, just a couple more quick questions in related to this part. So is it too late in the process for two things? The first is to extend the green over toward the upper half of Dock Street, just behind the Berta's house. I don't sense, I mean, if we're trying to create a park atmosphere and, you know, really invite people, I don't understand. I know there is a restaurant there. I know that people want to protect their business. I know there may be even plans for a hotel. I don't think that parking there is really necessary. I think it, you know, just undermines the beauty of a waterfront park. And secondly, are we too far ahead to add even like the little stop and go hands or something at the intersection of Randall? Because right now what happens is that the pedestrians just walk out whenever they want to, and the cars have to stop. On a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you're not going anywhere because people are just going to keep walking. And so there is, again, no structure or order to the traffic systems downtown. I just think this is the perfect opportunity to address it, and I don't. So I guess I'll follow that. As it relates to the mobility, I like the.
Alderman Gay, if I could just say, your second idea, we are definitely not too late. This is the appropriate time to incorporate that. The first is spot on to the compromises. There was a decision by the City Dock Action Committee. It was a hard fought or hard negotiation where the businesses did not want to lose any more parking. That is why it ends, the park ends where it ends. With that said, it's my understanding, and Ivan or the designers could add to this, that it is located in such a way that if we decide we want to take out that parking and extend the park, that we can. Is that correct?
Yeah, I totally think that should be done. I mean, I don't want to disrespect anybody's business, but I don't even know what restaurant that is. You know, it's a gorgeous park, extend it, take advantage of it while we can so we don't have to come back. The mobility, though, I really like the plan of utilizing what would hopefully be some sort of on-demand resource via, you know, phone. So a couple of questions here. I know, is this a program that will be run through a particular parking company? Is that something that you guys have conceptualized already? Or I noticed there's a little van there that says AMRP. Will the group that you guys have put together be running a, you know, on-demand service throughout the entire process, or?
So the interim mobility solution, we have Via Mobility as part of our team, and they are.
What was that? I'm sorry.
Via Mobility. So they provide similar services in many other municipalities and cities across the U.S., everything from first, last mile transportation solutions, which this would more fall in under, to actual transit, effectively running transit for different cities. So they have the expertise and experience to manage a program such as this, which is one of the reasons why that we're so excited that they're part of a team.
And so who would pay for that? Or is that a part of the whole, you know, like grand bargain? I'm assuming that that's included in it.
Yeah, for the interim solution, that's included in the project cost. But what we want to do is, incorporate some of those improvements that we put in place during the construction and make them permanent. Things that work to keep them on. So at that point, then it becomes a city cost.
Yeah, and a couple of things that's critically important, as mentioned in the interim mobility plan, updating third-party databases, etc. Because again, that's how people track traffic and things now. So that's critically important. And last, have you ever heard of Rod Austin?
Yes.
So that is very similar to me, the idea here. And I guess that's what I was getting at in regards to that. There's a potential for revenue in the interim mobility plan for the city if we were to instead incorporate a system like such. Is that something that you would be in favor of, or?
I think just as a generality, while there are certain types of solutions that can, when it comes to transit, that can provide a revenue, some kind of net revenue in, so in other words, pay for itself and then some, they are very few and far between. We are not seeing that this will do so. Because one of the things that we want to do is incentivize the use of the system to avoid the inconvenience.
So it'll be free?
That is the current plan for the actual service now, but we're in the process of defining what the requirements are and how it can best be used. So we'll have more detail around that a little bit later in the fall.
And so the idea with this is that I'm at my vehicle, I push the button, or am I at my house? And they pick me up from my home. Am I parking at one of the lots or the stadium and I'm using this app, or?
It depends on where your house is. So we need to have a defined area where there is on-demand service. But the goal of the approach is to have it serve and utilize the existing garage capacity that exists. So we want the service to encourage people to park in the other garages and then provide a mobility service to closer into City Dock.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I'm going to do a speed round here. I think we have Board of Elections coming in here later, so I'm going to just go to someone who hasn't spoken yet. Sheila hasn't spoken. Alderman Arnett hasn't spoken.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of quick questions as they relate to the garage. One, the entrance from Duke of Gloucester. You mentioned the one from Gorman Street. Is there going to be a restructuring of that entrance? It's kind of odd. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's not the best. So one of actually that image right there coming in is it'll level out. So both entrances will be improved, both from Gorman Street and Duke of Gloucester. Duke of Gloucester will be kind of flat, going straight in to improve safety and ease of entry and exit.
The elevator shafts, are they in the same location as they are today, or are they moved around in some portion?
They move with the building, but are located on the Gorman side, and that was something that was developed over time through community input. That it was seemed that the preference was to have them on the Gorman side street for particularly the neighbors around the garage.
And the restrooms, and it may sound minor, but the previous City Dock master plan insisted that we add restrooms to the garage, so they're still there, right?
Currently, there are no restrooms in the garage itself. There will be restrooms at City Dock, but we have not incorporated restrooms for the public at large in the garage.
I thought we had done that, but we didn't add those? Okay, thank you. The other question has to do with demolition. Is there going to be an implosion of some sort? How is the building going to come down? And what consideration is given to the surrounding buildings when that happens?
Yeah, if there is If there is an implosion, something has gone horribly wrong. We're definitely not planning on doing that. We are going to be taking the garage down in pieces, effectively construction equipment known as pulverizers, which is about as heavy duty as it sounds. We have effectively big claws that break down the concrete on site. We're actually going to be reusing some of the rubble on site to fill in, for example, the entrance from Duke of Gloucester side. When we do that, there's a specific demolition plan that's being developed that includes communication with the neighbors and also things like noise mitigation measures for time of day restrictions, as well as dust mitigation measures. So along with that type of effectively chewing or eating down the building, there will be sprinkler systems that reduce the amount of dust. And by taking it down in pieces, it also reduces the vibrations and risk associated with, for example, demolition, as seen on many a popular YouTube video with the entire building coming down.
And my last question has to do with wayfinding.
Yep.
Will you be accessing our wayfinding system that will direct visitors particularly to the new parking?
Yes, absolutely, both during the interim period and after. So that's a key part of the communications plan is doing all the updates ahead of time for when it's coming down, and kind of, for lack of a better term, for a period of time, trying to remove Hillman as a reference anywhere during construction.
Okay, thank you.
Your Alderman Annette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Going back to the city dock concept, which, and by the way, in passing, I thought the restrooms in the garage were part of the conditions for allowing the 2 a.m. liquor license, so I think that might have to have some revisiting. But on the concept there for the garage, and I just lost my picture here, there is the Harbor Masters building not labeled, but it's at the end by the Burtis House? Because I don't see the Harbor Master on here. Where's the Harbor Master house and all the restroom and shower facilities for the marina?
The area that you see brick, going left from the green, you see a brick area, and then you see like a white area behind that. There are restrooms and all of that included in that area in a new structure.
Okay, but is that also the Harbor Master house, or is that going someplace else altogether?
That's TBD. So there may be a new Harbor Master building that's just below where the Burtis House is shown, or it may be incorporated into the Burtis House. But we need to work through that, what becomes of the Burtis House and how much space there'll be available for Harbor Master.
Okay.
So again, this is still very early design concepts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But you can tell by the fact that I'm asking about this, I think we're already beyond the garage. I think the garage concept is pretty good, so I think at least I'm pleased with that. Just one other question in passing on the pump house. This is probably for you, David. Is that going to be noisy? Suppose the pump is roaring away during the weekend. Is that going to be a noise pollution problem?
So both the generators and the space that the generator sits in will have noise abatement.
Okay.
So there'll be a surround around the generator itself, and then there'll be sound attenuation inside the room. So it shouldn't. The short answer is no. It shouldn't be extremely noisy.
Thank you.
Alderman Fan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of questions that are rather different, but the first one is, when it comes to demolition, how on earth are you going to get that stuff out of there? I think of dump trucks. I think of really the double dump trucks, the huge long ones. And I'm kind of horrified at what they could do to our narrow streets down there, particularly Main Street. But I'm thinking in terms of it comes out of Gorman Street onto Conduit, those are two sharp turns for a truck to make to get onto Main Street. But not only that, the streets are so narrow there that I can't, I mean, I don't see it. Can it be done physically? Yeah, I suppose so, but I don't know. It just doesn't sit right with me if that's the way you're going to dispose of the old Hillman garage. May it rest in peace.
Understand the concern. We're very lucky to have a very experienced contractor with us. So this is nothing new or extraordinary from their side of things to take something like this down and out. It's a fairly good amount of turning radius, actually, believe it or not, on some of the corners here compared to other areas. So, but there will be a dedicated logistics plan for the construction of routes and times of days that those will be going in and out. That is actually one of the reasons why we're choosing the construction methods that we are, is to avoid those long type of trucks that you mentioned. That as long as they're the standard ones, we're pretty comfortable we'll be able to do this.
Well, right now we have the outdoor dining at Osteria 177, and that comes out into the street a little bit, and I guess we're not going to be able to do that, once the construction begins, because that really makes the street, makes it particularly narrow there, it seems to me, for a sizable vehicle coming out and going on the conduit. My other question has to do with the elevators. Right now, there's only one elevator, isn't there, in the Hillman?
Yep.
Where will the new elevators be? Will they be? I think it doesn't really do, unless you're in a wheelchair, perhaps. I'm not sure how helpful an elevator is if you park on one side of the Hillman garage now and you have to walk 75, 100 yards maybe even to get to the elevator. It kind of defeats the purpose of having one, in my mind. Are they going to be placed a little bit more strategically, shall we say, in the new one? Hopefully. It's a leading question.
Definitely understand the concern, and there are a couple of. A lot of people tend to use the elevators, particularly like families and strollers and things of that nature. Tend to gravitate towards the elevator usage. The elevators will be placed, as you can see here, in the northeastern portion of the building. So that's towards the entry from Gorman Street. We are only planning on having elevators there, not in the other corner. The reason for that or a couple of reasons for that. The most important one is just due to height restrictions. The elevators and elevator towers are the things that stick up the highest. And the usage of the facility, a lot of users will be gravitating towards City Dock or kind of out Gorman Street in that way.
All right, so they would both be on Gorman Street at either end of the?
No, just at one end of the building.
Okay. So they'd be together?
Yeah, two.
Okay, thank you.
So Alderman Tierney's had a hand up the whole time. Board of Elections coming in at 5:30, so I'm going to call it after Alderman Tierney's.
Oh, okay, real quick. On the bathroom issue, that I think you're referring, Alderman Finlayson and Alderman Arnett, I think you're referring to the Crabble report, and those requirements have been met in putting a restroom in the Harbor Master building. So that as far as that. And then I guess my most important question is, and it's probably for David, is on the microtransit, are we coordinating Okay, he knows the question, okay.
We are, because we have money and Kwaku's working on that, and
Yeah.
that's going to be closely coordinated with what we do here. So hopefully at the end, we'll have that system plus whatever we put in place here.
Oh, great. And I thank you, Russ, for the the missing harbor master building. I was going to ask that as well. So thank you again. It's very exciting. It's the most exciting garage I've witnessed, other than those fun helix ramps that you go on.
Alderman Go, you have a quick question? No?
Yeah. Are we still please renaming it from Noah Hillman?
Mr. City Manager?
I think we still are looking at that. Eileen, do we have any new information on the Hillman family and their?
No, just the initial information, but we were certainly talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked Rhonda's idea of naming rights. I do think we should still do that. I think there were some issues as it related to race associated.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I was referring to, so yeah.
All right, well, that was very exciting. Thank you. Thanks for keeping us informed the whole way. All right. The City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
The agenda has been completed.
Okay, meeting adjourned.